For its part, South Sudan's government says it's going into the next round of peace talks determined to bring the conflict to an end. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
South Sudan's government is reiterating its commitment to the revitalization of the peace process expected to begin in Ethiopia next week. The agenda for the next round of the talks includes the restoration of permanent ceasefire, full and inclusive implementation of the peace agreement, and revising the timetable for implementation of the peace deal so that elections are held at the conclusion of the agreement's timetable. Juba says it has faith in the peace process.
All these great nations, they have gone through mistakes. They have butchered themselves, but they have learned from their mistakes. Let South Sudan also learn from the mistakes of the past. I believe this time we are going to overcome all these difficulties. South Sudan is going to be more peaceful.
Regional experts, however, warn that the war in South Sudan has now engulfed the whole country with many new armed groups, and while IGAD group, which is brokering the talks, will have to find a way of including all groups in the peace process, there is the danger of opening up the 2015 peace deal for renegotiation. Forming a broad-based government means opening up Chapter 1 of the peace agreement, which is on formation of the unity government, whereas including new armed groups in the peace process would mean opening up Chapter 2 of the deal, which is on security arrangement. But South Sudan's government says it's not ready for renegotiation of the 2015 peace agreement. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Let's get you some perspective on these latest developments. I'm joined from Kampala by Charles Romushana, a political analyst and the former director for political intelligence at Uganda's internal security organization. Charles, thanks for your time this evening. Now, some reports are accusing Kenya and Uganda of aiding the internal conflict in South Sudan. Is there sufficient reason at all to believe that this could possibly be true?
Yes, I think it's for Uganda, there is no doubt about that, because Uganda directly intervened in that conflict on two fronts, actually three fronts. The first front is that it encouraged the politics of exclusion, where in the initial deal where I had included the Riek Machar and the Nueras, Mr. Museveni's line was exclude them. The second line was that when they rebelled, he deployed militarily, took over Juba and advanced towards Bol. And then the third one, of course, is that he's making deals, economic deals with outlets like Total, because you notice Total now almost is in charge of the entire Batayan region, including the Equatorial province. So he's directly intervening. And certainly Kenya is also there under different covers. So I think the report is valid, is accurate.
Well, Charles, as we know, both Uganda and Kenya are, of course, active members in South Sudan's peace initiatives. But as you refer to this direct intervention, are these two countries essentially just trying to push through their own interests?
Yes, you see, in the initial comprehensive peace agreement, which was signed in Naivasha, it more or less did not take care of the interests of the Equatorial Defense Force, because the Equatorial Defense Force was with Bashir fighting the SPLA. So the comprehensive peace agreement handed over the new South Sudan to the SPLA. And the conflict later was seen to be between SPLA in opposition and SPLA in government, i.e. Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. But they did not take into consideration the interests of those in the south of Juba, the Equatorial province to be precise. Now, fighting has now spread to the Equatorial province. Even this agreement, which they signed in Addis Ababa, did not take into consideration those that remained peaceful. It's not that they do not have issues. South Sudan does not belong to communities, the Nueras and the Dinkas. There are others. So if you say you're going to exclude the Southern, you cannot have peace. And now they are armed and they are experienced. And besides, they are almost getting exterminated. You have 2 million South Sudanese as refugees in Uganda, to be precise, in West Nile. So you must have a peace agreement that is comprehensive enough to include all elements in political elements in South Sudan. And you notice the South Sudan government is adamant. The Ethiopian negotiation system is also adamant. and they are looking at exclusion. So certainly you cannot achieve peace. Besides, the roads that supply Juba pass through the Equatorial Province. You are talking about the Juba, Nimre, Guru Road, and then that road from via West Nile, Kaya, etc. And these roads are going to be blocked. This wave of fighting, which has just resumed, is going to block those roads. So who is going to be supplying Juba? Absolutely, you won't have any. Even today, I was listening to news, you already have demonstrations in Juba because of skyrocketing inflation. So you cannot solve the problem of South Sudan now. You can't have peace now unless you address the question of exclusion of the people of south of Juba.
Then what is, Charles, let me ask you, Charles.
And they are already armed.
What is the biggest obstacle then? You talk about this question of exclusion. Why is it taking so long to address this particular issue in order to achieve lasting peace in South Sudan?
You are dealing with Salva Kiir, who has come out as, first and foremost, is weak. He's been weakened by the two neighbors because they wanted to have him as their puppet. One, Kenya was looking at having a pipeline between South Sudan to Lamu Port to divert from using the pipeline via Khartoum. The second one, Mr. Museveni also has economic interests there. But Kenya and Uganda are not an end in themselves. They are also agents of some other powers, some international corporations. And this now complicates it because Kenya and Uganda, Mr. Museveni and the system in Kenya have got economic interests in South Sudan, and they think the only way they can have those interests furthered is by controlling the politics of South Sudan, by having a puppet regime in South Sudan. They can only do that by subverting democracy. They can only do that by subverting stability. Because if the system in South Sudan is stable, it is all-inclusive, then it will be sovereign. You cannot dictate to it. And therefore, this wouldn't further the interests of Kenya and the interests of Mr. Museveni. So that's why they are openly, directly, and wholly interested in an unstable and weak South Sudan, so that they occupy it.
It is a deeply complicated issue. Charles Rwamushana, thank you so much for that analysis, joining us there from Kampala in Uganda.